letting go of our fear of life. So as we know, fear is a common emotion. We all experience fear as human beings. Even animals experience fear. And how do we know this? Because when I was working at a university, I remember that the dean of the department, he actually wrote a book, beautiful book for his children. And it was called Even Animals Experience Fear. Something like that was the title of the book, which I found to be awesome, because it showed how the animals express fear based on what they do. So how do we humans express our fear? And that's what we want to get into, because the thing is not to not experience fear. The thing is, what do we do with the fear? Do we allow fear to paralyze us? Or do we take fear as a challenge, as a way of, seeing it and saying, do you know what? I'm experiencing this fear now. However, one thing is to experience it, and the other one is to allow it to control my life. And this is when we come and make that decision. Okay? Now, just before getting into what fear is, I want you to please just answer that in your chat. What does fear mean to you? So you respond. Fear is, and I'll give you just like half a minute to respond that. Fear is, if there is a single word, you write it there. If there is a phrase, you write it as well. So when we come together as a group, we can explore what you just, what you are sharing, what fear is. Because fear may be subjective. For what fear means to one of you may not mean the same to another one. So we want to explore and expand what fear means to us. Now we go into the definition of fear. According to Paul Ekman, fear is one of the 7 universal emotions experienced by everyone around the world. So let's notice the word he used, everyone. Fear arises with the threat of harm, either this harm being physical, emotional, or psychological. And then let's pay attention to these words he used, real or imagined. So what does he mean by this? Well, it means that maybe that threat of harm is not happening in reality. We may be imagining that it's happening. However, it doesn't have to exist in the tangible world, to make us experience fear. And that's what we want to become a master in being able to identify what is the fear for something that is real, or when it's a fear that's something that is not real, that we are imagining. While traditionally, he continues saying, Paul Ekman, while traditionally considered a negative emotion, because before you used to say, and people sometimes say negative emotion, fear, anger, frustration, guilt, we know that, we have talked about that in other conversations. However, fear actually serves an important role in keeping us safe, as it mobilizes us to cope with potential danger. And remember that all this happened, and it has its origin, in prehistoric times, when men had to go out and hunt in order to eat. So of course, if they saw a huge lion, of course, fear served a purpose. They ran because otherwise they would be eaten by the tiger, by the lion. However, right now, we do not have those types of dangers, like a lion or a tiger. However, we have other situations in our lives that may be dangerous. And just as a preventive way of coping, we may have that experience of fear. Okay? So it is for us to know when fear serves us to prevent a danger, something to happen or when fear is paralyzing us to become, who knows, a better version of ourselves, okay? To accomplish something that would make a difference in our lives. Some of those things that we're going to be talking now. Now, how does it functions in the brain? Because everything happens in the brain. So how do we, enter in the, I am just admitting people because they just joined us. Okay, so how does fear work in our brain? What happens first is, if please just pay attention. Pay attention that you only have one. You only register through one or enter one, because Lisette, you have two Lisettes. So just notice that to just remove one. So that happens when we do it 2 times. Brenda. Lisette, I am going to... Yeah, I did it. I was able to do it on my end. That's wonderful. Something new I learned today. I loved it. Okay, so now I can remove it when you see. That was awesome. Thank you. Okay, then we go to see what are the parts of the brain which are involved in the fear response. The response of fight or flight is produced and activated in the hypothalamus. So it's produced in the brain, and the hypothalamus activates the sympathetic and adrenal cortical systems. Here my physicians who knows about this, Parvin, I imagine she knows, of course, what I'm talking about, knows about these systems work. Then when this happens, the body reacts and becomes tense. Blood flows rapidly and the body tenses. All this we may experience when we are scared. Okay, sometimes we have, clammy hands, or we get cold hands. We may feel like trembling. All these things happen. The adrenal medulla releases adrenaline and noradrenaline. And then this causes blood pressure to rise and the heart to accelerate. All these things happen, they originate in the brain, and they happen in our body when we feel scared. And remember, this feeling of, being fearful may be real or imagined. That's something that I want you to take with you today. It may be real or it may be imagined. So each time that you may experience fear, you ask yourself that, is this real or is this imagined? Now, and this definition from goodtherapy.org, talking about fear, they say, a person's response to danger generally involves many different areas of the brain, but research in the field of psychology has identified the amygdala as pivotal. So it has a very special place in processing fear. When a person is confronted with a potentially dangerous, so it may have the potential of being dangerous situation, the amygdala sends excitatory signals to other brain areas to ensure that these areas also become more alert. Evidence of the amygdala's importance to the processing of fear has been highlighted in many studies. So I imagine my scientists here, Afsat, Parvin, and I don't know if some of you are as well, must be recognizing all these things that happen in the brain. Okay? So to know, to have as a foundation to where fear comes from. Now, which are types of fear that we may experience? Let me tell you, there are so many fears. We are just going to mention some of them. One is fear of abandonment. People fear to be left alone, that people are just going to let them, to leave them and to let them just be there. Fear of death. Many people, I don't like to say everybody or no one. I don't like to go to those, generalizing. However, based on research, based on studies, the fear of death is real. Okay? It's real. Then fear of getting sick. This is one, and we're going to expand a little bit more in the next slide, I believe, that has always been present because people get scared of getting sick. And these things happen also when people are getting older. The other day I was talking to someone and she was saying to me, Ligia, but when I was a kid and when I was young, I hardly heard of people being sick, suffering from this, from that, unless there were, conditions. However, nowadays, most of my friends have something. I have things, conditions. So that happens. Of course, that sickness and health conditions happen, since we are born. There are babies who are sick. However, by nature, and it's the norm, what happens is that with age, we may develop more health conditions. So that's one of the challenges that many people have, that before getting old or older, they are scared. They are fearful that because they're getting older, they're gonna be sick. And the thing is that even though it's the norm, quote unquote, and it's expected and it happens, let me tell you, many people in their 80s, 90s, and some of you know about my mom, 100, hardly got sick. The other day I was talking to a lady in her late 80s who told me, Ligia, nothing hurts. Not even my knees, she said. So we don't want to assume that we are going to be sick if we get older. However, it is a fear that many people have. The fear of being alone, very close to abandonment. But to be alone, many people fear that. Some people cannot be by themselves. And that is something that, if that happens to us, let's take a moment there and just explore the reason of you not wanting to be alone. Because when we are alone, we have all the time in the world to connect with who we are, to really go there. And sometimes people do not want to go there. So it's something for you to explore and just, to be cognizant about. Now, what about fear of failure? Fear of failure, it's a big one. Many people are scared of failing. And because of this, many people do not take the opportunity, an opportunity that is presented to them. It may be an amazing opportunity at different levels, professionally, personally. But because they are scared they may fail, they don't take it. So they prefer to avoid it completely than to give it, to give themselves the chance to do all their best to see if they are successful. They are scared. On the other hand, even though we may say how this could be possible, well, it is. Some people are scared of being successful. Where does that fear come from? The thing is that as one becomes successful, They understand and they know that there are more responsibilities involved. The more successful, the more things to do, the more attention people are paying to you. And then some people say, no, I prefer to be under the radar. I prefer that people don't pay attention to what I am doing. So I prefer to stay, in the darkness, not succeeding, but at least nobody is paying attention and looking at what I am doing. All that is based on fear. Fear of change. This is a very common fear. We as human beings, most of us, I would say, tend to like the things, to recognize the things we know, the world we know. We like to be in our comfort zone. We want to just know what is going to happen. Now, when there is change, of course, we don't know how to what are the things that are going to come because of change, and we may be scared of that. We may have, fear to speak in public. That's one of the greatest fears. The two greatest fears, according to, studies, are the fear of dying and the fear of public speaking. Believe it or not, but, that's what they say based on studies. Now, what about fear to appear ridicule? And it is interesting because what does this tell us? First, that we pay a lot of attention to what other people think. That's, for me, when I saw that, I'm like, that's the first thing. We pay so much attention to what others think. That's first. And second, we all, in some time or another, do something that is silly, that make a mistake, and so what? But some people, are very scared, so they do not do certain things just in case they appear ridicule. So they are, not really engaging in life at times or in relationships because they have this fear, okay? And then, of course, and this will be, a very natural and expected fear, the fear of impending danger. When we know that something that we do or where we go may be dangerous, and that's natural to experience some fear. Now, the fears that we may experience because of COVID-19. Back in 2020, 2 years now, almost, in a month, as we experienced it in the United States, we started with the pandemic, COVID-19, and so many fears happened because something new, something dangerous, something that changed our worldview, our assumptive world. The world we knew changed. And then all these things happen. The one, the greatest fear, of course, was and still is the fear of getting sick, the fear of, getting COVID, and either, dying for that, sadly so much has happened, or, having COVID, experiencing being sick. And then because of that fear, what has happened and how our life has changed? Well, some people, because of the fear, they limit their outings. They limit how much they go out. If maybe they want to go to a restaurant, let's say, but if they cannot sit outside, they don't go. And we're talking right now, but at the beginning, of course, nobody did any of that. But even to this time, even now, 2 years into having COVID, people have limitations to where they go. Of course, the social distancing, giving you a hug, forget it. We're not doing it. Fear of getting the disease. Using masks is something that we continue doing, some of us, because we want at least to have some protection, to be proactive, preventive. And the change of lifestyle, when we would travel more freely, when we would go to different places more freely, now that all has changed. And of course, and this is the one that touches my heart tremendously, because I hear it a lot, is that people visualize a gloomy future because of COVID. How is it going to be? So they create a scenario of a future that we know when it's uncertain, that we don't know how it's going to be in a year. We don't know. But when the person tends to be fearful, they go to that future and they paint it gloomy. So when we tend to paint a gloomy future, we stop living what we have now. So that is again a choice we make, and something in that venue we talked about last week, you may remember. Okay? Now, at this moment, just take a moment, take a pause, and this is just a reflection for you. And think about something you want and haven't done out of fear. Just because of fear, you have not done something that you want. Maybe you have wanted to do it for years. Just take a moment and write it down. If you don't want to share it in the chat, that's okay. On the chat, that's okay. Write it somewhere. A paper next to you, on your phone, if you want, on notes, whatever. But for you to remember. Okay? If there is something you haven't done that you really want to do, and you haven't done it because of fear. Now, another just introspection. What common fears do you recognize in your life? Of all these, common fears that I mentioned at the beginning, do you recognize, some of those fears that you have? And how do you react to the fear? Because remember, that's where we want to focus on. How do we react? How do we handle the fears? Okay? Because remember something. When we experience fear, many people, what they do is they either try to ignore it or they try to avoid it. The thing is that what we ignore doesn't cease to exist. It is only repressed. So what I highly suggest, because it's with fear, the best approach, as we see this in any book that you read about fear, is you confront it. You confront the fear. And only then you can take some of that power away. Because the more you avoid it, the more you ignore it, the more power it takes. It grows the power over you. So just notice what type of reaction you have. Now, I like a lot this, and this is very common, this phrase, and it is all over because why? And I remember that Zig Ziglar used to say it a lot. Fear. F-E-A-R. And it stands for false evidence appearing real. It is a false evidence. It may appear real to us. It may feel even real. However, it is false. But it has enough power to bring that sense of fear to you. So from now on, and if you take something out of this conversation, is that ability to recognize what is real and what is not real. Okay? That is causing that fear in you. Now, Dr. Karl Albrecht, must be German, he says this: fear is an anxious feeling because fear and anxiety are like cousins. They're so close to each other, okay? And because when the person is scared, very, very common is to also experience anxiety. So as he says, fear is an anxious feeling caused by our anticipation of some imagined event or experience. You see? You notice here, again, imagined event. Now look at this. This image, when I saw it, I thought it was so representative of how a person may feel when they are scared. just like a dark tunnel. See this woman just sitting just in the center, in the middle of that dark tunnel. And we can see like the expression, the body language that we can see there with that, profile. It's of someone, really into a lot of pain. And the light, as it says, cliche, at the end of a tunnel, and in this case we can see it, there is an opening at the end, so there's some light coming in. It doesn't matter for her because she is in the dark. She has stayed in that dark tunnel that represents fear. So, what do we want? Do we want to stay there in that darkness? Or do we want to just move up a little bit, to move forward towards the opening, towards the light? That is going to happen when we are able to confront that fear that may be paralyzing us and that can make a difference in our lives. Now, look, living, and this is from a book, and you're going to see it there. Fear is important. You know what? That is funny because here, because without a sense of fear may put us in dangerous situations. So it serves at times, but living with constant fear is equally dangerous. It can prevent us from living our lives to the fullest. It can cause chronic stress that affects our physical well-being. And this is something that we want to take into consideration, because if we are constantly scared, it may cause chronic stress, and that of course is going to have a huge effect on our physical, in our health, in our physical dimension. And then this is the book that he wrote. It's called How Little Fears Rule Our Lives. Because it is interesting. It is not that we are going to wait like a huge tsunami to come. Until then, we are going to experience fear. No, are the little things that may happen in our lives, are the situations that we may have with our relatives, are the situations that we may encounter at work, are the little things that you may notice that you have something on your skin, and then you see that you have a little thing, in your skin. And then you may start going to your head and thinking the worst because you have a little red thing on your skin. You may create this huge thing in your head. Who knows what I have now? And you go into the internet and you go into Google searching and you create this huge monster. Little things that happen in our lives, we can make a huge difference if we control those events. Because as it says, dealing with everyday fears and anxieties. It is really nice, this book. I was, doing some research on it. I was reading some of it, and it is really nice. It's really good. Now, it is now that we have seen, all these fears. What do we do with that? Well, you made a decision. Be the person you want to be. If I ask you, do you want to be happy? I imagine all of you is going to raise your hands because we want to be happy. That comes from within. So one of the possibilities to, for us to feel happier is to, instead of focusing on your fears, you choose to focus on your possibilities. See how beautiful this quote from Napoleon Hill. He said, before you control conditions, you must control yourself. Before you control the external factors, conditions, you must control yourself. It all starts with us. Always remember that. Now, this is a very, very good book of this author, Napoleon Hill, but he died many years ago, and what they did, they created this book out of the things that he used to write, no? But something that stayed with me was when I read that inside of the book. Fear is a mindset. We talk so much about mindset, and we may overhear it because it's all over. Mindset. You have to have this type of mindset. This type of mindset. You are not, having a happy life because of your mindset. All has to do with mindset. They apply to any profession, from being a physician to being in real estate to playing sports. Mindset. Now, what about this? Fear is a mindset. So how can we get freedom from your fears? And this is, the book that I am presenting there, sharing with you, because he goes on and explaining how you can just change that mindset, instead of being fearful, to have a mindset that helps you. Because fear in our lives, especially fears that are imagined, do not serve, they do not have a positive effect on us. So this is another book that I wanted to bring to your attention. Now, this monk, it's amazing. And he, I just discovered that he just died like less than a month ago. I think it was January 22nd. He was extremely famous. You may have heard of him, Thich Nhat Hanh. And he wrote this book, Fear, Essential Wisdom for Getting Through the Storm. This book is very spiritual because it is highly based on mindfulness. Very based on mindfulness. It is a beautiful book. It is such a beautiful book because it is interesting. Just reading it gives you a sense of calmness. Okay? See what he says. The first part of looking at our fear is just inviting it into our awareness without judgment. This is pure mindfulness. We just acknowledge gently, with compassion, that it is there. This brings a lot of relief already. If you are able, once we are able to do it like that, just by doing that gives us a sense of relief. Then, once our fear has calmed down, we can embrace it tenderly and look deeply into its roots, its sources. Understanding the origins of our anxieties and fears will help us let go of them. Some of you, I know, take pictures. If you can take a picture of this, and it's something that you want to stay with you, is this way of looking at our fears. Because when we sit, and it's the same when we talk about grief, that I have mentioned that book, Grieving Mindfully. I would tell you that most of my clients that who come to see me because they have lost a loved one or because they're grieving maybe for another reason, I suggest so much that book, Grieving Mindfully, because it's very similar. What Kumar says, you sit with your grief, and it is just inviting it, to come in. The same with fear, but we do it with so much love, with so much compassion, that the power of that fear just calms down. Okay? So this is a beautiful way of doing it. This is pure mindfulness. This is his book, the one that I was mentioning to you. Okay? And he says, talk to your fears. There's a section in the book. Talk to your fears, talk to your inner child. And he gives such a beautiful way of doing it. And I do this in a different way with two chairs. No, it's the technique of the empty chair. But he uses pillows. because he's, into meditation. He was from Vietnam, I believe. He was a very famous Vietnamese monk. And he says to sit, in one pillow, like a beanbag, like a pillow, and then to have another pillow in front of you. And then you talk as an adult to your inner child. The inner child talks to you, and then you talk to as an adult to your inner child. And to help, your inner child to just let go of your fears, because now you are an adult. He does it in a beautiful way. So this is a book. I'm gonna see now how I'm going to bring this up, because please, if you can just mute, I'm going to be muting because we want to just, most of you are mute. Okay, good, because we don't want to have some feedback in the back. Okay, now we have different approaches, and we saw that one is mindfulness. Now what about this? Cognitive behavior therapy. Some of you that knows me know how the great importance I give to our thoughts. Our thoughts are the ones who can totally make the difference on how we deal with situations. So cognitive behavior therapy, we can do that. That is, thoughts, emotions, actions. We're going to see it a little later. Then, of course, we can do some body relaxation to start relaxing our body, to just calm ourselves down when we feel scared. Do some aerobic exercise, because remember that we have said when we change our physical state, we change our emotional state. Aerobic exercise, you can just go for a walk, but something that helps you change, your physical state. Observe your thoughts. There we go. Or observe your thoughts. And observe your self-talk. What messages you are giving to yourself. And then challenge your self-talk. Because if that message that you are giving to yourself is, instead of helping you let go of that fear, it's making you be more scared, then what type of thought can you have to change that, to shift that, okay? And you made a commitment, because it does work. All these things, when we commit ourselves to do it, they do work. There are some alternative methods of things that we can even take, and all this based on research. There are supplements like valeriana root. We can have there's some tea of that, valerian root, some, how's it in English? Linden flower, in Spanish is tilo, but linden flowers. We can have, there's some drops also from valerian, and things that we can take, okay, to calm ourselves. If you follow a diet with no caffeine, because caffeine make us also more excitable, so you want to be calm. Do some yoga. Yoga is wonderful to calm ourselves. To do some tai chi, and to do some meditation and mindfulness. All these things can help you, okay? Now, what fear do you want to overcome? And you can start with one. Let's say that before you realize that you have, let's say, 3 different types of fear. And then you say, okay, which is the fear that is limiting me the most, that I would totally like to let go? So you choose one, and then you recognize your fear so you can release it. So first you start with recognizing it, validate it, process it, and release it. Here we are. You recognize it. You go, you sit, you sit with yourself, you sit with your emotions, and you ask yourself, what am I feeling in this minute? What am I feeling? I am scared. I am experiencing fear. That's okay. No judgment. Love, no? Self-compassion. Recognize it. This is the first thing you want to do. Then, when you do that, you breathe through panic. You breathe through all that feeling that you may have, Face your fears. Imagine the worst, and then see that you can do it. And very important, as you recognize the fear, look at the evidence, if it is a real fear or not. Remember, don't try to be perfect. I'm not scared of anything. It's human to experience fear. Visualize a happy place. That helps us also when we want to divert from the fear. And of course, it helps us a lot to talk about it. Now, reevaluate. After you recognize your fear, reevaluate it. And ask yourself, what of this makes me feel scared? What of this? Once you know the cause of your fear, what is making me feel this way? Is it real or is it a perception? Something else that you may want to ask yourself, is this an old fear? Because maybe it's a fear that you have even since you were a child. Because we carry fears, no? The same that we carry messages, we carry fears. And then it becomes sometimes so heavy, like a backpack that is just filled with books. So heavy. The same with these things. The same with fear. The same with grief. The same with anger. All the guilt. All these emotions that are heavy. So if we don't let them go, they get heavier and heavier. Just like a backpack, filled with books. Applying mindfulness. This is so beautiful in a way that can help us just, process. Apply mindfulness when experiencing fear. Sit with your fear. Watch the fear after recognizing it. Do not judge it. Take a deep breath and focus on your breathing. Then think of something you like and notice the change you experience. And practice. Practice. We master things when we practice. And you may want to start with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that's okay. But it's to do it. These things do work. Absolutely, they do work. Okay? Now you reaffirm that you can do it. Confirm your ability to overcome your fears. The first step to be able to do it is wanting to do it. I want to finally let go of this fear. Once you make that decision and you commit to it, I assure you can do it. Okay? So, things that we want to do. Now, going into your mindset, going into the way you think. Remember, thought, emotion, action. Based on how we think, we feel. And based on how we feel, we act, we behave. So go there, go to your thought. What am I thinking? That is making me feel the emotion, fear, and act like paralyzed. Okay? You can do it. You can go into your inner self and do this work yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. Only you can do it because you know yourself. Okay? Because I tell you, look at this. Look at how beautiful to take just this view from the top. Open space. The sun shining. Freedom. And this freedom you can get once you release that fear that is holding you in a place that you would love to just let go. Only confronting your fear, you will be able to overcome it. Great. So thank you so much.